Hi everyone, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Nick.
And you're listening to It Takes Two, the podcast where two people take two movies with the same plot or premise and watch and discuss them.
And it's Spooktober, folks, so we are on to some horror movies. In this episode, we covered The Evil Dead from 1981 and the reimagining of The Evil Dead from 2013.
Yeah, so we're including this in our remake series. And yes, we did do this on purpose for Spooktober, but you guys will find that we may start covering horror movies more often at regular times of the year, because it turns out that a lot of remakes are horror movies.
Yeah.
A lot of horror movies have been remade. So our remake series is going to include many horror movies.
And I'm glad we watched the 1981/1983 version versus Evil Dead 2, which is the more comical version of it, which then leads on to The Army of Darkness, which is the third one with Bruce Campbell in it. Have you seen either of those two?
No, I hadn't seen these ones until today.
So. The remake in 87, again with Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, basically has the same plot and premise. I think they just had more of a budget, so they spent more on there's some weird special effects, and they've taken a more comical route to it.
Okay.
It's borderline already, the 81 version is borderline already there, because it is very reminiscent of early horror movies where the budgets were very small. Because that's the thing about that sort of golden era of horror movies, is they were always very small, the budget that is. And it made for a more intimate and exciting sort of era of horror movie versus these days, which, as we will discuss later on in this episode, they are, the modern movies are splatterfests. Wouldn't you agree? You agree from
not all horror movies,
no,
but certainly this one.
I think with the 2020 horror movies, and even the late 10s, they tend to, I think it sort of goes in a cycle, and we're sort of coming back to the more psychological, because we've had Us, Nope, and Get Out, which have all been really intimate. Even the cinematography is really intimate, and they are more of a psychological fear building.
Yeah.
Versus, I think, from the 90s on into the 2000s, they were very jump-scary movies.
Yeah, and a lot of slashers. Slashers were a big thing.
I still stick by my statement of thrillers are humans killing people, and horrors it's something spooky killing people.
You can have horrors that are humans killing people.
Yeah.
An example of one is actually starring one of the people who's in the remake of Evil Dead. She was in Don't Breathe. Oh,
that's the one where they break into the guy's... Spoilers for a movie.
Well, we're not going to give away the ending of it or anything, but
he's the guy who's blind, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it very much is definitely a horror.
Yeah.
But it is just people. There's nothing supernatural going on there, and it's definitely a horror. So it's right. I know you disagree on the definition of a horror, but everyone else would disagree with you. You've just made up your own.
I've made up my own genre. I just think that the teeny sort of teenage, oops, we killed somebody, or someone's trying to kill us from pent-up sexual tension, which is basically the whole plot of Scream.
But Scream is, I know
you murder people.
Scream is a satire, but it is a horror.
Yeah.
It's not a thriller, it's a horror.
Yeah. I still think that I go by the definition that horror has some sort of alternate element to it.
Well, you're wrong.
I know I'm wrong, but it's my opinion. And I live in a free country, and I can express my opinion.
No, because there's a whole genre.
I have the freedom to be wrong.
The whole genre of slashers are horrors.
Yeah.
But they're horrors where it's people killing people. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Do you think that's a thriller and not a horror?
there is some sort of element there.
What do you mean?
Well, I'll give you an. You know the Hills Have Eyes series.
Yeah, those are. It's like they're based on the
Reavers.
Tesla. Oh, okay, but I was gonna say, is there not like I've only seen The Hills Have Eyes 2.
Okay.
And it was the mutated people who had lived in the area where there had been nuclear testing.
Yes.
Which is that's sci-fi rather than supernatural.
I think I will reach out an olive branch to everybody who's disagreeing with me right now, including you.
Including literally everyone on the planet.
Yeah. People do some horrible shit to each other. And I feel that, like, the more spooky, alien, supernatural element you have to the genre, you get a better horror movie.
Okay, but there's a difference between you enjoying a particular kind of horror movie and deciding every other kind of horror movie isn't horror.
Yeah, my point being is there are subgenres within the genre, and I just feel that sometimes some movies are mislabeled towards horror because it's in the same genre. It's just like a subgenre. Like, you could have a horror movie about vampires, and you could have a horror movie about zombies, or in this case, demons, and they all sort of are the same genre, but it's like, I don't know. I just feel that there is a difference between them, and I just
yeah, they're different movies, but they're still the same genre.
Yeah, but I'm saying there's subgenre of movies where it's some form of other element. There's my ball.
Yeah, but like you're arguing that you like a particular type of horror movie, and therefore all other movies that you don't like are not horror because you don't like them.
No, I'm saying they're a subgenre of the genre.
Yeah, but you like the subgenre which is supernatural horror.
No, I just feel I like the horror where it's not humans doing horrible shit to other humans.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that horror with humans isn't horror just because you don't like it.
Yeah, but then you could argue...
That's like if I was saying, you know, I love sci-fi movies, I really like time travel movies. Any sci-fi movie that doesn't have time travel in it isn't sci-fi. That's not how it works.
But time travel is a subgenre of sci-fi.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that every other type of sci-fi is not sci-fi just because I don't like it.
Okay.
I do like most of them, but still. Like,
I'm just saying,
it doesn't make any sense as an argument.
I'm just saying that I don't find people scary.
Okay.
So I'm not afraid. Therefore, the premise of it being a horror, it does not horrify me.
But it does other people.
Yeah, but that's them.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's not horror.
Like. No one has to like everything everybody else likes.
I understand that.
People are going to be fast forwarding through this entire bit. Let's get back to the movies.
I'm not saying that you have to like all the horror. I'm just saying you can't decide it's not horror based solely on the fact that you don't like it.
Not that I don't like it, I don't find it scary.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's not horror. It just means that you are not the particular target audience of that horror.
True. Okay, well, that's what I'm saying, olive branch. I'll agree to disagree.
No!
Yes, I am agreeing to disagree. Let's just move on.
Oh my
no one cares.
God.
No one cares.
Everyone, go to our Discord.
One Nick, call of action at a time.
Tell Nick what a horror movie is.
Yeah. Tell me a horror movie you find scary in the comments below or on our Discord.
Oh yeah, we do post on YouTube on the same day now, so you can leave it in our YouTube comments.
If you're on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to get back to the movies? Because you look exhausted already. So you hadn't seen any of these movies before. Have you seen any of the other in the series?
No.
Okay. For other people who haven't seen it, what's the closest you equate to the first Evil Dead movie, the 81/83 theatrical release?
What do you mean? What's the closest I equate?
Because I would say this movie in particular had such a ripple effect within the industry of people making horror movies.
Oh yeah, I mean clearly.
Yeah.
Do you know what's really funny actually? There's got to be one person who listens to this who knows what I'm talking about. But when I was a kid, I used to play this game
Hi, Phil.
No, it'll be Connor. I used to play this game called Ghostmaster, which is, I've replayed it recently, so I think you saw me play some of it. It's a game where you control some ghosts, and there's different levels and different like locations, and you have to like haunt them and scare people away and achieve specific goals or whatever. And then there's like unlockable ghosts that you can free by doing certain actions or getting humans to do certain actions, and then they join your ghost army.
Yeah.
There is a level where it's set in a cabin in the woods,
Yep,
and there's 3 students come along, and you have to lure them into the basement to read a book and listen to a tape and summon an evil being that you can try and recruit for your ghost army. And until today, I had no idea
what they were
that it was just 100% a reference to the Evil Dead. That's it. That's exactly what it is. Because it's a second level in the same location, but the second level is called the Blair Wisp Project, and it's about, it's clearly based on the Blair Witch Project, which I understood that reference from when I played it originally. But I had no idea that the first level there was literally just basically the plot of the Evil Dead, but from the perspective of the demon.
Yeah. Gotta trick these stupid kids into the damn basement.
Yeah, and it's like trying to, because there's different ways you can try to lure them down, and like the entrance to the basement is from outside and it's all covered up, so you have to like use like spooky winds and fog and stuff to move the leaves off it, and then like try to make weird noises around there so they come around to figure out what it is.
It's like the reverse of Sims.
Yeah, yeah. You're trying to control people by controlling ghosts that are in their surroundings.
Yeah.
It's a fun game. But it's literally just the plot of The Evil Dead, and I had no idea.
It's interesting, because without this Evil Dead, the original Evil Dead movie, you wouldn't have like Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Cabin in the Woods
is like the perfect premise for if you haven't seen Cabin in the Woods, I highly recommend it. It is probably my number 1 horror movie because it is very, very overarching. Like there's a bigger story that you don't understand.
Yeah. They could 100%. They discussed this on Heroes Out recently. They could 100% make like a whole universe around Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, because it's a lot of people believe it's all linked to like Buffy and then there's some Firefly fan theories of how like the agency, which I think is more mentioned in Angel, which is obviously the spin-off to Buffy. Yeah. That they like there's a government agency working with demons and blah blah blah.
Right.
So you could argue that those are the kind of people who would then survive an apocalypse and an exodus from Earth.
But you could make like a whole TV series out of it. You could have like, because they have, I think there's like references in it to there being different locations where they're doing the same thing. So you could have like different spin-off movies in different locations. So you could make an entire expanded universe out of Cabin in the Woods.
And the other thing that I'd like to talk about a little bit before we just jump right into the similarities, obviously because it's a reimagining, they're very similar. It's interesting based on like nationality of the writer and the location they're filmed in and the audience they're designed for. You get a very different type of horror movie. For a brief example, I'm not obviously the first person to talk about this, but in Americanized horror movies, the people always experience whatever horror thing is happening to them in the wilderness. Because in America, the wilderness is scary and the cities are safe. Versus when you get British British horror movies, the horror part always takes place in the city. And the safe area is always outside the city. For the perfect example of this, you'd say 28 Days Later, which is in London. You'd have Attack of the Block. I know it's not a like super horror movie, but it's more sci-fi, but I'm saying like it's happening in the suburbs. You sort of get a more of a the city is dangerous, which I think is a cultural thing.
You do get that in A Quiet Place.
Yes.
That the reason they've survived as long as they have is because they're not in a city.
Yeah.
Because the city, again, it's all about noise, so the city is very noisy. So
those
and the
two...
silence as well, I guess, because we did discuss this when we discussed those movies.
Yeah.
That they try to get away from the cities. Yeah,
it is very much the wilderness is dangerous, and then the cities are safe, and then the reverse of it, and then you get the weird. I'm not saying the genre is weird. I'm just saying Japanese horror, Asian horror in general, tends to be far more intimate and not so much blood and gore, but more like psychological building. And it's, I think eventually we'll probably end up covering them, but like the American remakes of Japanese horror have always been a hell of a lot worse. I think it's just Americanizing anything makes it worse. Like one of my favorite horror movies, which would be in my top 5, which is Rec or REC, which is Spanish,
I think, yeah.
And it is about spoilers for I'll give you the premise. I won't actually tell you what happens. The premise is a TV reporter crew going into a building, and they're following the fire service. So it's from the perspective of sort of found footage, which is one of my favorite genres when it comes to horror, because like Cloverfield, like
Blair Witch
Project, you feel so trapped, which I think really heightens the fear element of it, because there's no looking away. You only can see what you can see, and that's it.
Yeah, and the thing about found footage horror is that it's just very directly putting you in the shoes of the person experiencing it.
Yeah.
So it feels more visceral, almost like it's more real, like it's happening to you.
Yeah.
To an extent.
And of course, then there's not sequences. With found footage, why I love it so much is there's no sequences, which I think helps the Evil Dead original. Obviously, the same elements are in the remake, or the reimagining, sorry. Where when you're not locked in the perspective of the person, you can see things that help build the tension in the background.
Yeah.
But they're not as impactful when you can't see it. It's sort of like the difference between the lead up in one of your favorite shows, which was Lost, of like the creepy thing in the woods.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know what it is. And it's revealed to be a smoke demon, and you're like, or a smoke thing, and then you're like, oh, this is boring. Like, all of that lead up of trees getting moved around. Like, I saw the first episode and thought it was a TV show based on Jurassic Park.
Right.
That was my first thought when I watched the end of the first episode. I was like, oh, this is a Jurassic Park show. This is fantastic. They've crashed on one of like the islands where the dinosaurs are. This is going to be amazing. And it turns out it's a stupid smoke demon. And I'm like, this is boring.
Kind of lost its legs towards the end of it. I should do a full rewatch at some point. And watch it from a new perspective, because watching it like week by week, and the ending was like, because I think the ending they aired it the same time in Ireland that they aired it in the States. So it was like we got up at like 5 a.m. or something to watch Lost, and it was really disappointing. Yeah. The finale.
I think there was some issues around it, because I'm pretty sure they had no plan, because they thought it was going to get cancelled. And then when they had a plan, they were like, cool, it's going to end here. And the studio was like, no, you're making too much money, more seasons.
Yeah. I still think the first episode of the second season, the opening of it, is one of my favorite openings to any episode of any show I've ever watched.
Is that when... Sorry, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen Lost. Is that when they discover that the tail section survived as well? No,
so it's... there's a whole plot line in the first season of Lost where they found this hatch in the ground, and they're trying to figure out what the hell it is, what's down there, whatever. And the final moments of the season finale of the first season of Lost are them using explosives to blow up the hatch.
Yeah.
But there's a whole premise in Lost where like every episode focuses on a different character and you see flashbacks to their life before the island and stuff like that, you know. And that was the way they did every episode in the first season.
Yeah.
So the second season starts with this guy, and I think for the beginning of it you can't really see his face, you don't know who he is, but he's just like going about his day. He's like having a shower, listening to music, and like having his breakfast and doing stuff, and then at the end of his morning routine you hear the explosion and you realize he's been living in the hatch the whole time.
Right.
And it's just like such a fantastic reveal. It's so good. Because you do not see it coming, because the way they've set up the show so far, you're like, oh, okay, this is a different passenger on the plane that we haven't really, had a look at yet. Yeah. And then you're just like, oh, shit. And it's so good. It's so well done.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, it kind of trails off the more... But there's definitely, like, the first few seasons of Lost, there's some really great moments. Anyway, we've gone totally on a tangent.
Yeah, it's great. It's what people come for. If not, put it in the comments. I think without the original, there wouldn't be a lot of horror movies within the same sort of premise or adjacent premise. And I think it's like George A. Romero's first, zombie movie, which like kickstarted the entire genre. And I think teenagers going out to they play it up in Cabin in the Woods. And if you haven't seen Cabin in the Woods, I highly recommend it.
It's apparently this isn't the first teenagers going to a Cabin in the Woods horror movie.
Yeah.
But it certainly is the one that popularized the trope.
Yeah.
And you'll find a lot of Cabin in the Woods movies over the years very directly reference Evil Dead. Yeah. Like it's a kind of a cornerstone for that genre.
So in the beginning, you have teenagers, including the man himself, Bruce Campbell, going to a cabin in the woods for like a weekend, and for a weekend away with his girlfriend and his best mate, and they're all like college friends, versus the reimagining where you have the brother, I can't remember his name. David meeting up with old friends because he lives away now, and his sister Mia is unfortunately a drug addict, and the friends have all gathered together to take her away from the availability of being able to purchase drugs.
Yeah.
And take her into the woods to basically make her kick it and go cold turkey.
It's the same layout of characters.
Yeah.
That there's the main guy and his girlfriend and his sister, and then another male character, another female character.
Yeah.
So it's the same. They all kind of have an equivalent.
Yeah.
In the previous movie, I found the drug premise interesting because it's a good way to kind of explain away why when she's the first one to start seeing things, they just assume it's hallucinations or something to do with her withdrawal.
Yeah.
And it kind of explains why they don't take her seriously or investigate things, because they think that this is, either symptoms of withdrawal or her trying to convince them to let her leave so that she can go get drugs. So that was interesting. What really annoyed me about the remake is in the original, they just kind of go to this cabin that seems like an abandoned cabin. I know the actual cabin they shot in is an abandoned cabin.
Yeah.
But it just feels like a totally abandoned cabin out in the middle of nowhere that they've never been to. So it makes sense that they don't know what's in there. Whereas in the remake, there's like pictures of them all over the cabin, so they clearly have been there before and have been there, going there since childhood or something.
Yeah.
And yet they don't know that there's this trapdoor and there's this basement with all this weird voodoo shit in it, like, because it doesn't seem like the opening scene of the remake is like someone in the past doing, burning someone who's been possessed by this demon.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that's happened recently.
Yeah, you could argue it had been between them coming there as children and then happening afterwards.
But, like, that's so weird. If that happened between, then if that's their family cabin, then these people just went into their cabin and into their basement to do this occult shit. That makes it even weirder. It just didn't fit for me that it was a cabin that they knew and had been to a bunch of times and just didn't know about the secret basement and didn't know about, the book and if they'd been going there all the time and the book has been there all the time, surely they would have experienced something related to it before.
It's also, I think, brought up in spoilers for a small part of the end of Cabin in the Woods. But at the end of it, when the big twist is happened, I think one of the characters literally turns to the other character and goes, wait a sec, like, we were there because his uncle, like, lent him the cabin for the weekend.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have an uncle. And I think that does help play on the genre of just like, oh, you're stuck in a situation you can't escape from.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason. It's like the whole lead up with the Harbinger in Cabin in the Woods, which is like a character who tells don't go up in those mountains, they'll kill you. I'm a spooky guy on the side of the road in the gas station, or it's Tucker and Dale do it perfectly.
I love Tucker and Dale.
Where he's just like trying to hit on some girls because he's like all awkward and a really nice guy.
Yeah.
But he's just so awkward that he accidentally like picks up a scythe and walks up to them and is just like, you kids going camping? And they're like, get away from us! And
if anyone hasn't seen Tucker and Dale versus Evil, it is like the perfect satire of this Cabin in the Woods horror genre. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
And it's also like plays on the tribalism fear of inner city kids not understanding about, boonies, maybe one, or in wop wops as a New Zealand slang. Kids from rural areas who, I grew up like, so that's why I have a little bit of interest. What's the word? Inconsisticities is not a word.
Idiosyncrasies?
Idiosyncrasies, thank you. I was going to say idiocracy, and my brain was just like, that's not the right thing. And there is a difference between city kids and country kids. And the country kids are a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more like, she'll be right, fixed with some number 8 wire, sticking duct tape on serious,
God.
life-threatening wounds.
He just puts duct tape on everything in that movie.
Yeah, it's great.
He's like, you've severed off your own arm? Don't worry, duct tape will fix it.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think that, I mean, good advertisement for duct tape, I guess.
Yeah. Put a roll in your first aid kit today. Are you in the woods? Did someone just get possessed by a demon and stab you with a piece of broken mirror? Did your idiot friend rip out that said piece of broken mirror, which is like the first thing you do not do in first aid? Just shove some duct tape in the wound.
It's so annoying. Because there is a bit in the first Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Where the guy has been like impaled by, or like somewhat impaled by a part of a tree branch or something.
Yeah.
And it's only when he gets possessed and Ash is trying to like stop him that he pulls it out to hurt him.
Yeah.
Whereas in the remake, every time someone gets impaled by anything, the guy's like, okay, I'm gonna do the opposite of what I'm supposed to do and just rip this out and let you bleed to death, constantly. He just keeps doing it. He does it like 7 times or something. Like, it's just like people keep getting stuff stuck in and he's like, time to rip this out, time to rip this out. It's like, just leave it in there.
Yeah.
Until you can get to a hospital.
It's the part that, so me and you have a mutual person that we both know.
A mutual person.
Yeah, a mutual person.
not a friend.
Yeah, they are friends. I remember us, me and him and our other workmate sitting down when we had to do a task that was always boring and took hours. And so we just got the DVD, like my mate had the remake, the 2013 version on DVD, and we happened to be in a place where there was very large televisions and DVD players attached to them. So we sat there on a couch and watched the Evil Dead remake. I think we watched a couple of movies that night. I think the other one was one of the Paranormal Activity ones. I think it was called like the Marked ones or something. It's another movie.
I do know that this person does enjoy Paranormal Activity movies.
Yeah. I remember him basically becoming a turtle as all his limbs and head try to retract into his torso in certain sequences of that movie. Namely, the part with the syringe. So spoilers if you haven't seen the remake, and I'm going to spoil some pretty gruesome shit right about now. Where his girlfriend goes absolutely nuts, saws off part of her face with a broken
So this isn't the main guy's girlfriend, it's
Eric's girlfriend.
Are they boyfriend and girlfriend? I feel like it's not stated. They're both, like, old friends.
They seem the closest couple to everybody else.
Yeah, I did get the impression, but it's never outright said, I don't think. I think they're just referred to as all. Because I think it seems like towards the beginning there's an implication that she previously had dated David?
Possibly.
Because there's a weird thing between her and his now girlfriend.
Yeah. That whole sequence where she's in the shower, saws off her own face, stabs him in the chest with a piece of broken mirror, and then and she's got like a syringe because she was going to drug Mia to help her with the side effects of her withdrawal, which in reality is demon possession. And just proceeds to stab him repeatedly in the face with this like huge like veterinarian syringe, to the point where after he smashes her head against, I think it's the toilet, or it might have been the bathtub.
I think I thought it was part of the sink, was it?
Could have been.
Some large piece of ceramic that he
and
bashes her head in
he
with.
then has to pull the broken syringe out from the underneath of his own eye, so it would have been above the orbital bone and below the eyeball, and
very close. Which is interesting because that's one of the first places she stabs, I think. So it means that most of the other times she was hitting him, no, but the needle had come out already. So he didn't actually get stabbed with the syringe that many times. Because
if you love body horror, oh my god, this movie is so for you. The amount of just visceral blood, like the blood and gore, like every single person who received any of these injuries would be instantly dead, because the amount of blood these people produce is insane. Like, blood donors get over them, all over these people.
I can tell you how many.
How many litres?
Gallons, because it's the States. So the original movie used between 200 and 300 gallons of fake blood.
Yeah. Not regular blood, that stuff's expensive.
Yeah, fake blood. Well, they did, as like a gimmick, I think, when it opened in cinemas, they had like blood drives outside that would give people stickers. If they gave blood, they give stickers and a free ticket to the movie, saying like, I bled for the Evil Dead.
So that is a brilliant premise. And also, depending on your body weight and hydration level, you can get quite nauseous and like lightheaded after donating blood. That's why they give you a cookie and some juice. Well, they used to give you a cookie and some juice.
They also had as another marketing gimmick, they outside I think it was only for opening night or something, they had ambulances waiting outside. Yeah. To take people away if they fainted at the sight of it. That's brilliant. Yeah, great marketing gimmick.
That's almost that's on the same par level as Kevin Smith joining the protesting his movie, and then getting interviewed on television, and the interviewer being like, "That's the writer and director. Why is he protesting his own movie?"
So the original had 200, 300 gallons of fake blood. The remake, do you want to guess a figure?
2,000.
Higher.
Higher than 2,000 gallons of blood.
A lot higher.
10,000.
A lot higher.
Higher than 10,000. Is it from the? I thought the rain sequence was like CGI.
No. They didn't do any CGI.
The rain sequence where the abomination
they did
summoned.
So it's funny because the guy who directed it has a background in VFX, like in computer VFX. But as an ode to the original, which was all practical effects, he insisted on doing all practical effects for the remake.
No wonder it still looks good for a 10-year-old movie.
So, do you want to get... Knowing that the rain sequence is all practical, do you want to guess again?
50.
50,000 for the rain sequence alone.
Jeebus!
70,000 gallons of fake blood used in the whole film. So that's 50,000 in that rain sequence, 20,000 elsewhere.
The smell alone. For those who don't know, fake blood in movies is usually made from basically corn syrup and food coloring. I think from people I've known who have bought it, because you can buy it basically online and just get sent to your house. There's a pepperminty taste to it. I think it's to stop you from feeling sick if you put it in your mouth, because obviously a lot of sequences where people get injured and die with the camera pointed up to them, they're like always spitting up fake blood, and I think the reason they peppermint flavor it is because it's the least disgusting flavor you could have constantly in your mouth without becoming nauseous, based on the premise of you having blood in your mouth. I think that's the science behind it. I could be wrong. If you know the answer, in the comments. Get in the comments. I didn't realize it was that much. Well, it makes sense. Is that the highest use of fake blood in any movie?
No? I don't know. I mean, I feel like it must be up there.
Yeah.
70,000 gallons is a lot. I'll see if someone has put that up anywhere. Most fake blood used in a film.
Okay. What does Google have to say? What does Google, the algorithm, tell you?
The first thing up was It Chapter 2.
Haven't seen it.
No, that only is that.
Because when it.
Oh yeah, it says that reportedly It Chapter 2 set the record for the most blood used in a movie.
Okay, does it tell you how much?
No.
Is it just like one more gallon than the Evil Dead?
I don't know, because it's saying that it's referencing one particular scene that had 5,000 gallons of fake blood, but that's nothing close to.
Because it must be in like some sort of actual authoritarian sort of, listing, rather than some blogger's opinion.
Well, this article specifically says that, although the people in It Chapter 2 claim that the film used a record-breaking amount of blood, the director of the 2013 Evil Dead remake says they used 50,000 gallons of fake blood in the rain scene alone. So, I don't know. It seems like they haven't.
There's no authority.
There's no authority on it. Someone else is saying brain dead.
No, there's way more on the rain sequence alone, where
there is a lot of fake blood in brain dead though as well.
Yeah, but not to literally the heavens open and blood rains from the sky like it's the freaking apocalypse. Well, it is literally the apocalypse.
Yeah, that's the point.
Yeah.
Apparently there is a blood sprinkler in Blade that uses real fake blood.
Yep, that's the blood rave opening from Blade, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
sets up the entire movie. It's a great sequence.
Another one. Elevator scene from The Shining. It's not nearly as many, but they use about as much in the elevator scene from The Shining as they use in the whole of the original Evil Dead.
Right.
So that's still decent.
I always thought there was a miniature. You haven't seen The Shining, have you?
I've seen The Shining.
Oh, okay. It's just the other Kubrick movies you haven't.
I've seen some Kubrick movies.
Yeah.
Because he did A Clockwork Orange, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen A Clockwork Orange.
I've got the collector's edition. That was so expensive.
Okay, so apparently the previous record was held by Dead Alive, and then The Evil Dead overtook it. Right. The 2013 remake.
Fair enough.
And that multiple people have said that, so that seems to be the most accurate. I don't think it's coming up on the recording, but if you hear like weird banging noises, our door to the room that we record in is like just continuously banging. I think it's wind getting in from a window somewhere else, but
demons are trying to get in.
I do think it's funny that it's happening when we're doing an Evil Dead episode.
Yeah.
Because that's the evil trying to get in.
And the Necronomicon is not to open the door and let him in.
Well, we're stuck in here then.
Yeah. So the Necronomicon is another piece of like fan continued I think it was probably Throwaway, a book written in human blood and bound in human skin that has the ability to summon a demon. Um, there's more because Sam Raimi's the one on the recording in the original talking about how like they found it in a burial chamber from some Sumerian religion, and then he's like taken into the woods with his wife to like research this book, and then it's killed his wife, and then the only way to kill his wife is by like cutting her arms and legs off. So obviously there was some dude who was living in the woods that went crazy, murdered his wife, and they disappeared. And then you get no lead up other than it's like a cheat sheet of how to like exorcise a demon in the sequel. But the Necronomicon obviously continues on within the rest of the Evil Dead series, but it's it's like the TARDIS or chainsaws or something along those lines, or the hockey mask and the machete.
Yeah.
Even though hockey mask and chainsaw, is the one that's supposed to be like representing Jason Voorhees, but he never actually uses a chainsaw.
Right.
He's a machete wielder. His weapon of choice is a machete. I think it's only in Jason Takes Manhattan that he actually uses a projectile, and it's a crossbow. But yeah, the whole hockey mask chainsaw thing, which is referenced in The Simpsons, doesn't happen.
It's funny how those things like pop up, because I had an example and it's gone out of my head, but it happens a lot that there's like people think a certain, there's an image that everyone has of something and it's not actually accurate to it. I mean, it's the Mandela effect, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's just weird how that, how images like that get into the pop culture kind of hive mind. Yes, the zeitgeist. And we, that's what we think of, but it's not what's actually happening.
Yeah. And it's, I think it really helps, like, the genres in general, like, disperse within the greater movie watching community, because there's a lot of people out there who do not like horror movies whatsoever. We've got a mutual friend who we sat for a movie to watch The Thing, and then instantly was like whispered to her partner, like, what kind of horror movie is this? And it's like, oh, it's mainly body horror. And she's just like, I'm done. Like, we're leaving.
Yeah. And she's a huge film buff.
Yeah.
I ran into her a bunch of times at the
film festival.
Yeah. Different people don't like different types of movies. Yeah. You don't like romantic movies. It's
because they're romantic. I explained this to you yesterday.
I know. But you don't like, it's a fact, you don't like most romantic movies. Yeah. You're not a fan of. Even though you're very romantic in real life.
Yeah. I'm the sweetest gentleman there was. Like 500 Days of Summer is probably the best example of a modern romance movie that actually makes sense.
But you say that, except here's the problem with that. And it's a bias thing, I think, in general, but so it's not just you, but people like you who dislike, and I would lump myself into this, because I'm not, I quite regularly would say I'm not an action movie fan.
Yeah.
But as a result of, like, not liking certain movies in these genres, we don't watch a lot of that genre.
Yeah.
And therefore you're not seeing what the good ones are.
Right.
Because we've watched action movies for this podcast that I'm like, I really enjoy this, even though I would still say, I don't, it would take a lot for me to on purpose sit down to watch an action movie, and it'd be the same for you.
What was funny to me is how far you flipped for my birthday special episodes, which were the
Escape from LA, Escape from New York. Yeah. I was like, I hate this movie, and then the sequel, I was like, I love this.
Yeah,
it's so good. So I think, there's a bias. Not always. I mean, I think with horror stuff, it can be quite clear that you don't. There are tropes that are very much in a lot of horror movies, so going in, like, this is going to be a horror. There's going to be jump scares, and if I don't like jump scares, don't go into it. There's going to be body horror. If I don't like that, don't go into it. Etc.
It's another thing. Like, obviously, jump scares. Based in, like, the fear of jump scares is based in, like, our lizard brain,
Yeah.
Where like something jumping out at you is scary.
But also they trick you. They do things with the music and sound and stuff to make
it all helps with it
to build the tension so that you get that jump scare.
But I think that like the genre of horror movies killed it in the 90s because everything was a jump scare. Even setups to things that weren't even scary were jump scares.
Yeah.
It was always like someone looking off into the, like it'd be some road trip horror movie, and then like the slightly nerdy within the genre, or within the cabin in the woods, she'd be the virgin character, would be like staring at something horrible happening in the distance was they're like driving around in the countryside, and then she'd be like so focused and the camera would be like super focused on this thing, and then her cheerleader friend would put her hand on her shoulder or something and she'd jump, and then you're like, that's the scary bit, and you're like, this whole setup tells me exactly what kind of movie it's going to be, and you've basically ruined it because now every single time there's a reveal it's going to be, on the same premises. And jump scares are boring. There's a perfect scene for an example for this. In the previous mentioned movie, The Marked Ones, which is part of the Paranormal Activity series, there is a scene where the camera is in a wide angle and the main protagonists are in a circle and they're in a very, very long room. I think they're in a church, something along the lines of an abandoned church. And they're sitting around at the bottom, like really close to the camera. I don't know, obviously it'd be like two different cameras recording the same thing because you can't have something in focus with being close focus and far focus at the same time. But you just see like something run across in the background.
Right.
As they're like doing their like little ritual thing, and they're like, it didn't work. And you're like, no, it fucking worked. It just didn't pop out in front of you. It's like that, to me, is a much better like psychological trick because you're so focused in. Like, I see it because I'm a movie guy. I like watching movie all the time. Me, movie good. But you're like so focused in, and then you see something moving in the like real fast, like shadowy movement in the corner. You're like, that's scary. Being like, hey, that's not, like, to me. And I think like the 90s and the early 2000s absolutely killed the whole thing. And I think it's we're coming back to, body horror with CGI being cheaper, but like, man, the remake is filled with some great body horror sequences. Like, we've covered a few, but like there are some other sequences in there, like the electric carving knife is so visceral. It's very 127 hours. The nail gun, like all of those sequences are just so disgustingly great. If you love body horror like I do, but I probably watched The Thing way too young. And Alien, probably Terminator 2, because you get a little bit of body horror in there, and like I think Terminator 2 was like the T-1000 with the stabby liquid metal like piercing, like anything that goes into somebody and then doesn't immediately come out is always really like, because that's a feeling you can't understand without experiencing it. Like, I've had a knife stabbed into the palm of my hand, and it burns. Like, you think it'd be like a standard like cut on your skin, because like after a certain point your body doesn't understand what's happening.
Right.
So anything that's like penetrated into your flesh has a very like a burny sensation that might have been the fact what I was cutting with a knife at the time. But like the point being, like, it's a different experience to like a cut, which is just like stingy pain, versus like something stabbing you, which is like a burny sensation.
Yeah, I've never been stabbed or impaled, so
Yeah.
I'm glad I don't know it.
I don't recommend it. It's not a bucket list item for you.
Not something I want to experience per se. So I think I'm good. I still can appreciate body horror, I think, without getting impaled.
Like, one of my favourite, talking of British, like, it's not even a horror, but that whole sequence in being New Zealanders, having a love for me being a New Zealander, you loving Peter Jackson's work, the fact that Nicholas Angel, Simon Pegg's character in the beginning of Hot Fuzz, is stabbed by a Santa Claus, and he's talking about the ongoing injury, about his hand being a bit stiff, and then you find out later that it was Peter Jackson dressed as Santa Claus stabbing him, and it's just such a fantastic, little weird, Peter Jackson just being like, oh, you guys are fans? Sweet, I'll come cameo. Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg also cameoed in not Dawn of the Dead, not Diary, it's not Survival. I'm missing one.
I'm finding out a lot of movies they didn't cameo in right now.
I can't remember what it's called.
I literally don't know what you're talking about. So
there's another George R. Romero. It's not Diary, Survival. Those ones are found footage. Oh my god, it's gonna drive me nuts.
Land of the Dead.
Land of the Dead. Thank you. There was always a word. It's always a here and then of the dead.
Well, this Evil Dead was supposed to be called Book of the Dead.
Well, that makes sense with the Necronomicon.
But then the I can't remember who it was. The distributor, maybe?
Yeah.
Wanted them to change the name because they didn't think people would come to see a movie that had literary reference in it.
Fair enough. So. They're talking of another literary reference. There's an evil cooking book called the Om Nom Nomicron. Friend of mine got it for a present once.
That's great. Cool.
Super expensive.
The Om Nom Nomicron.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. I appreciate that. We're now 50 minutes into this and we haven't actually really talked about the movies.
Fair.
Which isn't great. Obviously there's going to be a lot of similarities between them because they wanted to leave it ambiguous as to whether it was a remake, a reboot, or a continuation of the series. But
what I've just read while we were dealing with some technical issues was it's a soft reboot because there's just this year there's the 5th installment came out.
Yeah, so when they were making it first, so they had planned to do a full remake.
Yeah.
Bruce Campbell didn't want a full remake because he didn't want someone else taking over the role of Ash.
Yeah.
But he was quite happy with this one because it was new characters put in the same situation.
Yeah.
We already discussed that the kind of setup of the characters are very much the same. There is a little bit of a playing on that brother-sister relationship.
Yeah.
I feel like that's more clear in the remake than in the original. It's kind of referenced that Ash and what's her name, Cheryl?
Yeah.
Are brother-sister, but it's not a huge plot thing really.
Yeah.
Whereas this one is a lot more focused on the brother-sister relationship.
The cinematography in the 81 version is fantastic because it is so jarring and unnerving.
A lot of it is just Sam Raimi running around with the camera.
Yeah.
Sometimes him and Bruce Campbell both running with it, a camera attached to a plank of wood as they run through the forest, holding one end each of the plank of wood.
Yeah.
And that last dead zooming in sequence was just Sam Raimi sprinting with the camera strapped to his head. It's very classic low budget cinematography.
The cinematography in it is fantastic because it is so unnerving and jarring.
Yeah.
One of my biggest pet peeves is shaky cam. Because it's not filmed that way. They edited it that way. And it is so annoying. Any low lit action action fight sequences where it's pushed really close in. Basically anything Jason Bourne.
Have you seen Chronicle?
Is that the one where the kids get superpowers?
Kind of. It's not. There are multiple movies where kids get superpowers.
Is that the one where it's
got Dane DeHaan.
Yeah, I believe I've seen it.
It's found footage.
Yeah, I was going to say it's found footage.
It's found footage, and then they have him use the superpowers he gains to like spin the camera around him and do like, and it's like, why would he do that?
Yeah.
You just wanted to claim it was fan footage and then put in fancy camera movements in it, and then you're like, oh no, but he's doing it with his superpowers. He's filming himself. It's like, why would he be doing that? Sorry, I was just thinking about how annoying that is.
Fair enough. That is really dumb.
Either do it one way or the other. Don't do fan footage and then mess with it like that. Like, there's no point.
I think that was where, like, I love 10 Cloverfield Lane, but like, Paradox was just dumb.
I haven't seen Paradox.
Don't. It's got your boy in it though.
Which boy?
Your Moon Boy.
Sam Rockwell?
No, not Moon Boy.
Oh, Moon Boy is in Moon Boy the series, not my boy from Moon.
Yeah.
Chris O'Dowd?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, who from Moon Boy could be in it?
Yeah. It's I really like film footage, but yeah, you're right. Like certain cinematography work helps, and some
if you're doing fan footage, you got to commit to it.
Yeah. You can't be just like, oh, I'm using telekinesis to move the camera so you can see
exactly.
more.
It's like, why?
Yeah.
If he's becoming like all powerful with telekinesis and stuff, why would he be like, oh, but I better film it?
Yeah.
With his fancy camera tricks. Like, no. Bullshit.
Yeah, it's like the equivalent of Superman doing a Vin Diesel and accidentally putting his phone while he's on Facebook Live in his pocket and then saving a falling plane and be like, oh, hey guys, I forgot I was online.
I thought you were going to say Superman, like, filming himself or taking pictures of himself for the newspaper that he works for, and I was like, that's what Spider-Man does for a living. That's literally how Spider-Man makes money, is he takes pictures of himself for the newspaper he works at.
Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
Like, I think his openness to stay away from traditional camera angles really helped him with the Spider trilogy, the original Spider trilogy, because obviously there's a lot of sequences which you can't get in standard cinematography with Spider-Man zipping between buildings and climbing up buildings and nothing being like a truly vertical or flat surface.
We haven't mentioned that he was only 20 years old when he made The Evil Dead.
Yeah.
That's nuts to me.
Yeah.
That he made such, like, a movie that became such a classic, well-known horror movie that spawned all these, sequels and remakes and stuff, and yet he made it as a 20-year-old. Like, he turned 20 just before they started filming. So he would have written it as a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's good for him.
Yeah, good for him.
And it also shows that, like, this is one of the things I think I spoke to you about it. There's a lot of complaints these days where movies aren't being made for certain genres, well, not genres, but genographics? No, that's not the... demographics, thank you. Why did I put a G in it? I'm losing my mind. Certain demographics, and there's a lot of complaints about it, because, this movie wasn't made for me, or, so on and so forth. Having Sam Raimi be able to make such an influential horror movie at 20 years old.
Yeah.
Writing and directing and filming.
And producing. And like, they borrowed, like, to get money for it, they borrowed a whole lot of money, and I believe Bruce Campbell remortgaged his family a home.
Jeez.
To finance the film. And they had, like, ran out of money halfway through it, so, like, for the second half of the film, Bruce Campbell is the only one of the original actors still in it, and everyone else is someone else in makeup to look like. Yeah. I mean, in fairness, they're all possessed, so easy to do, I guess. But they're all stand-ins for most of the movie.
It's it just shows that you yourself, the person listening right now, with the technology you're probably listening to this podcast on, if you're listening to a smartphone, have the ability to make your own movie.
Yeah.
It's just the time and the... not even know-how. Like, there's 1,000 YouTube tutorials of how to edit stuff. There is free editing software Like, just do it. If you want a movie that you identify with, make it yourself, because no one's going to make it for you, because guess what? Showing what's happening currently as we're recording this with the strikes, the Screen Actors Guild and the actors themselves helping, it really shows how disgustingly greedy the studios can be. There's a bunch of indie studios that have agreed to their demands. Well, not even demands, they're just basic working rights. And are now being able to film stuff. It's just these big holdouts that didn't stop doing it.
Yep.
And it just really shows that no one is going to make the movie you want. You have to make it yourself, and you have the ability to do it. It's something me and you were talking about.
Yep. We're gonna, right after we record this, we're gonna go out and make a movie. You've inspired me. Yeah.
So it really, there's a lot of legacy behind that, and obviously there's a lot these days. It is a saturated market, and it's having, and I think that's another thing that's always bugged me. Well, it's been bugging me recently. So many movies cost hundreds of millions of dollars, where you could just cut that budget in 5 pieces.
Yep.
And make 5 movies instead of 1.
Do you know what the budget was for The Evil Dead?
10 grand.
No, it was way more than that, actually.
Oh, was it? This is how much Clerks cost.
375,000.
In the 80s, that would probably be about, $1 million now?
I don't know.
Maybe. But it made like an absolute crap ton of money.
Made 2.9 million.
Yeah, so 300,000 into 2.9 is that's decent profit margins.
The remake, the budget was 17 million, and it made 97.5 million. Yeah. So, as much as people might say it's not as good, it certainly did well at the box office.
Yeah, that's the thing that Hollywood's sleeping on. Everybody's sleeping on at the moment, including you at home or at work or wherever you are, public transport, wherever you're listening to this. There's one of the most slept on, profitable movie genres there are. Horror. Because it doesn't matter if you get named actors. You just get people who can act and look terrified and scream real good. And you stick them in a situation where they have to act real good and scream real good, and you've got a movie.
Yeah. You want to go out and film a horror? This is how Peter Jackson got famous.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing some horrors around Wellington.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, the remake was filmed in New Zealand. Yeah. You discover that.
And north of Auckland, right?
Yeah, just north of Auckland. Just fun. Also, the actress who played, the girl at the beginning who's possessed and they burn her alive. Yeah. She's from Wellington.
Nice.
So, there you go. Some local talent.
Daddy, I'll rip your soul out.
It's so good. Because she's like begging, being like, what happened to Mom? Where is she? And then she's like, I'll rip your soul out, Daddy. It's like, oh, okay. Jesus.
All right.
That escalated quickly.
There is a lot of uncomfortable horror for women in these 2 movies.
Yes. Because I read the trivia around the first one before we watched the second one.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talk about the what I will phrase it the way they phrase it in the trivia, which is the tree rape scene.
Yeah.
Which is where the sister is, she's the one who's kind of sensitive to the occult and spiritual worlds, whatever, and she wants to get out of there, and she goes out into the forest and gets attacked by a tree. There's like vines catch her and like tie her down and stuff, and then it penetrates her.
Yeah.
But like the makers of the original, so like Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi and Rob, I've forgotten his last name, the producer. What's his last name? You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Anyway, they have all kind of said, if we remade it now, Rob Tappert.
Yeah.
If we remade it now, it probably wouldn't. That scene wouldn't be in it, or it'd be done differently. Maybe didn't need the penetration or whatever. So imagine my surprise when I then watched the remake from 2013, and they do the same damn thing.
Yeah.
Now they do make it a lot more clear in the remake that what is going inside of her is like the evil, and it's possessing her.
Yeah.
Whereas in the original one, it's just happening. But the actress who plays the sister in the original defended it, and she said, rape is an inherently evil act.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that this evil force would commit this evil act.
Yeah.
So it's not portrayed as like positive in any way. It's
because that's the whole premise of why Alien, the original, is scary. Because it's the same thing. The concept of having something forcefully impregnating you,
right,
to the thing that will kill you, like evil impregnating you.
Yeah. I mean, that's like Alien. Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
That is a classic premise in horror. But
I was going to say 6 Days, but that's the wrong Arnie movie. End of Days.
The Unborn. Have you seen that one?
No.
It's got Gary Oldman in it as a rabbi, so I saw it in cinema, and I was like, "Why did I watch this?" Odette Yusman plays the lead actress in it, and she gets pregnant with a demon baby. It's the whole thing.
Just a weekend out.
Always demon babies, But yeah, so it is, it is a weird kind of like people didn't like, or some people didn't like it as like a, it's misogynistic. Apparently, though, I don't think it made it to the final cut because I was looking out for it. Apparently they did shoot a sequence where Linda, who is Ash's girlfriend, tries to rape him while she's possessed. To be like, well, it's not just, it doesn't only happen to a woman in it. Yeah. It's just this evil thing that this evil force tries to do. But yeah, I was surprised that they kept that in for the remake.
Yeah.
Considering they all seem to have said in the meantime, like, oh, we probably wouldn't do that again.
We wouldn't do that again. Spoiler alert, they did it again.
Yeah. So, but like I said, they do make it a lot clearer in the remake that it is, like, because it's rather than just being another tree that goes into her, it's there's like a demon that spits it out and it crawls into her.
Yeah, like regurgitates evil out of it while staring her down and screaming, and then she's screaming and everyone's screaming.
Yeah, it's quite horrifying.
The makeup and the makeup and that whole, like, those people deserve an award because the practical effects in the 2013 one is so good.
The practical effects in both are so good.
Yeah.
And that's why they did practical effects in the remake, was because they were so impressed by how good. What?
I said it was going to. We've talked about this like a dozen times before. Like, that's why, like, the original Jurassic Park still holds up. Jurassic World, which is more recent, looks like garbage.
What we always bring up is Lord of the Rings versus The Hobbit. So I'm not going to bring it up again. But what I was saying was that they specifically chose to do practical effects in the remake in this case because of how well the practical effects were done on a lower budget than the original. They were like, they were genuinely impressed by how well they did and how good it looked, how good it still looks, this many years later. So we're 40 years on from that now. Yeah. And it still looks fantastic, the original.
Even the claymation of the melting.
I mean, it's obvious claymation, but I think it looks really cool.
Yeah.
I do like that they do claymation stuff. Apparently because they did stop motion for the infection spreading in her leg, after she gets stabbed in the Achilles heel, and the infection spreads in her leg in the original. But because they did it stop motion, the actors had to stay perfectly still while they did it, over I can't remember how many hours or whatever. And apparently, as soon as they finished it, she just immediately vomited everywhere. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Do you? Oh yeah. The only other thing I want to say really about the differences between these movies is that obviously in the original, Ash is the kind of lone survivor at the end of it, and then it's implied that the evil kind of gets him. Obviously, you've seen sequels where he's still in it, so I assume he doesn't die.
So it goes Evil Dead 2, which is a higher budget comedy remake of the first one.
Oh.
Army of Darkness, which is super weird, and I won't explain it to you because now I want you, because I didn't realise you hadn't seen these. We're going to watch it.
Okay.
And then Ash versus the Evil Dead,
Yeah.
which is the TV show that ran for 3 years between 2015 and 2018,
Right.
which he plays the same character. And that's why he keeps popping up, because he is in the verse.
Yeah.
He's still running around doing stuff.
Right. So that's how the first one ends. The remake, he manages to...
Who manages to?
The Ash equivalent, David,
Yeah.
manages to... first of all, the book tells them how to get rid of the evil. You have to either burn them, chop off all their limbs, or bury them alive.
Yeah.
So he buries his sister, Mia, alive. And then once the evil seems to have dissipated, he digs her up and he revives her with like a homemade AED he's made with like syringes and wires and a car battery.
Yeah,
like,
I wouldn't recommend that for first date. Don't
take any first aid advice from this guy. This is the guy who pulls, impaled objects out of people and squirts blood.
Of broken glass out of some dude's peck.
Yeah, terrible at first aid. He should have stayed dating the registered nurse rather than I can't remember what his girlfriend's job was.
She dies first. Which is
that's true.
The shittiest part about the whole thing is the person that would actually be able to help
them
dies first.
So he revives her and then she's alive and free from possession. And then when he goes inside to get the car keys, it turns out that the other friend is possessed and moving around, and what
a shock to David that Eric, who's the other character, also is possessed. Wouldn't he have thought that it happened to everybody else? They get killed and then come back again?
He just left him drowning instead of doing any of the burning and stuff.
I found out what they're called when we were
what are they called?
They're called deadites.
Oh yeah. I saw that come up a lot in trivia stuff.
Yeah.
So he shoots a can of gasoline and it wouldn't work. They've myth busted it.
Yeah.
And explodes, and it sets fire to, because he'd already poured it all over the cabin. So he sets fire to himself and the other guy. So that they, even though he becomes possessed shortly afterwards, he also burns. But what it does is, first of all, it takes away the Ash character from surviving, but it also turns it into a final girl movie.
Yeah.
And the apocalypse does come. We have that blood rain sequence that we already mentioned, and like a demon person crawls out of the ground, and then she has a whole fight and kills him.
Yeah. With a chainsaw.
With a chainsaw, of course.
One-armed with a chainsaw.
One-armed with a chainsaw.
Exactly.
Well, she has two arms for some of it.
Yeah, exactly the same as Ash.
Right.
Because Ash has got one arm.
And a chainsaw.
A chainsaw arm, in fact.
So it does, the change... First of all, it doesn't make much sense to me that he kills her, and then also when he revives her, he leaves a plastic bag over her face. That's not a good way to do CPR. Or any kind of resuscitation.
He's terrible.
He's just, everything he does is wrong.
Yeah.
But he somehow succeeds. But it does turn it into a final girl movie, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
An interesting change.
It'll be interesting to watching the 2023 sequel.
You reckon there's going to be a 2023? Oh, sequel, sorry. I thought you were going to say another remake.
No, it's a sequel to that version.
I thought there already was a sequel to that version.
No, it's the 2023 version. 2023 movie.
What's Evil Dead Rise?
That's the new one.
That's the one that hasn't come out yet?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because that was what came up when I was looking. Do we want to get into trivia then, rather than... or do you have anything more you want to say about the films?
Watch them.
Yeah. I do
Watch
think,
the movies.
As remakes go, it does... It's not like...
It's not a cash grab bullshit.
Yeah, it's not the best movie by a long shot.
We're losing our copyright. We have to make another movie.
Yeah, no, it is... it's a unique spin on it to some degree while also being very true to the original. And I'd say it is a remake worth watching if you're into the genre. And again, if you like horror and you have they've
all these buzzwords.
They've used different terms for it because apparently Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi have said it's a sequel.
Yeah.
The guy who wrote it said he wanted to leave it ambiguous whether it was a remake or a continuation or what, and so it's been known as a soft remake, soft reboot, because it could be a continuation, but it's also the same premise as the first one.
Yeah.
So take that with a grain of salt. If you haven't seen The Evil Dead and you like horror, watch it, the first one, because it is a classic, and you will see references to it in things you've already seen. It's very much the quintessential cabin in the woods horror movie.
Yeah.
The cabin used in the original was also the lodging for 13 crew members, with several of them sleeping in the same room. Living conditions were terrible, and the crew were frequently arguing. It didn't have any plumbing, so the actors would go days without showering, and the weather was so cold they kept getting sick. And by the end of production, they were burning furniture to stay warm.
Nice.
It's funny because I believe they filmed in Michigan, but it's set in Tennessee. I think that was it.
Yeah, it's also weird because
it's the other way around. It's set in Michigan, but they filmed in Tennessee.
Yeah, because one of them's wearing a Michigan State jersey, which would imply that they're college students from Michigan.
Right, so it's set in Michigan, but they filmed it in Tennessee. And the reason I don't think I took this down, but I remember reading it. The reason they filmed in Tennessee was because they wanted to avoid being stuck in the harsh winters of Michigan.
Yeah.
And then it turned out that year Michigan had one of its mildest winters ever, and Tennessee
had worst.
Yeah.
Classic.
So they ended up in freezing temperatures staying in this abandoned cabin. Apparently, when they're listening to the tape, the original script called for the characters to be smoking marijuana while they're listening to it. So they filmed a version where the actors were actually smoking marijuana listening to the tape, and they had to reshoot it later because of everyone's uncontrollable behavior. Which is hilarious.
Strong ass 70s to early 80s weed.
Yeah, so they did their principal photography in the winter of 1979 to 1980, and then most of the actors left production, and then for the second half of the film, it's just Bruce Campbell and a bunch of stand-ins. The film was shown to Stephen King early on, before it had been picked up by a distributor, and
What year was Maximum Overdrive?
He gave it a glowing endorsement, and that's what sold it to the public, and then New Line picked it up because Stephen King said it was good. I've written one of my own notes in the that's hilarious. I've accidentally written one of my own notes in the middle of my trivia notes, and it just says, so after that it just says, why did she eat her own hand off? Which, that's not where that should be. Lucy Lawless, tying back into New Zealand connections, she saw The Evil Dead, the 1981 one, when it first came out in cinema, and she hated it. She was appalled by it, especially the tree rape scene.
Mm-hmm.
And she said she was on the record saying she wondered what kind of horrible people could possibly make such a film. She then later married the film's producer, Rob Tappert, who had been the one who insisted on making that scene sexually violent.
Right.
And then worked in a bunch of productions by Sam Raimi, which is including Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Yeah.
But it's just funny that she was appalled by it. She married the producer.
Those who don't know, one of the biggest, other than Lord of the Rings, and anything made by Weta, one of the other biggest film basically shot in the buttocks of cash flow into New Zealand was Xena and Hercules. And yeah, that was a whole era. The other one that was famous in certain countries but not as famous as other TV shows, which was a TV show that I thoroughly loved as a kid called The Tribes. It was one of the people I used to know, a regular customer of mine back when I worked in specialist retail, was from Israel. And it had been translated into Hebrew and shown on their equivalent of after school cartoons.
That's cool.
So we bonded over the fact that we both watched Tribes as a kid, and which was filmed in the place that we met each other. It was crazy. That's the later seasons are garbage, but the first couple of seasons are fantastic. But it was just it was starting the ball right. Without Xena, without that, it wouldn't have been. We wouldn't have had Lord of the Rings, I don't think. It would have been Americanized with Nicolas Cage playing Aragorn and...
Or do the one the Beatles wanted to do where they were...
Oh my god.
Tolkien hated the Beatles.
Yeah.
I love that. He absolutely hated them. There seems to be a lot of, I guess because they had such a low budget, a lot of the like props in the original Evil Dead were just the real thing. So like the shotgun, he actually is firing an actual shotgun. But also where he's gonna cut up Linda with the chainsaw, it was a real chainsaw. They really turned on, and he was holding it like up right above her. So like when they do the close up of her neck to look at the necklace, you can see her pulse racing because he's literally actually holding a chainsaw over. Yeah, it's terrifying. Also, that necklace was originally supposed to be a plot point where they focused sunlight using the magnifying glass on it to burn the book.
Yeah.
But then they scrapped that, and then they had to come up with another use for it because they had already spent so much film filming close-ups of this necklace for no reason. Which is why then it ends up being used to like catch the lasso the book. Yeah. I don't. What was this one? Oh yeah. So when they opening night of the film, the audience shouted at the screen during like any of the movement, like the typical horror movie moments where the characters were doing something stupid.
Yeah.
So the guy who ran New Line Cinema at the time told Sam Raimi they're going to have to make cuts and cut out all those like things because it made the audience shout at the screen.
Yeah.
And then they passed another cinema later that night and saw sold out shows for the entire night and heard people coming out and telling people to go watch it because it was so good. And they were like, actually, don't cut it. So Sam Raimi is quoted as saying it was the shortest change of an editing plan.
Yeah.
It's just like...
Again, studios overreaching.
Yeah. And it was like, people love to shout at the screen in horror movies. It's like a whole appeal of part of...
It's also like a trope
horror
within horror movies because they do it in Scary Movie.
Right, and I mean Scream.
Yeah.
The whole point of Scream, half of it is they're taking, criticizing the actions of the characters in horror movies. For the remake, I already mentioned that the director had a background in CGI but chose to do physical effects as an homage. 95% of the remake was shot in chronological order, which is unusual for film.
Yeah.
But they did it because a lot of the film takes place in a controlled environment and the blood and gore gets worse and worse as it goes on.
Yeah.
And doing it in chronological order meant that they didn't have to worry about like washing all the blood off the walls for continuation.
Yeah.
There's a sequence where they have cards spread out on the table and they're laid out in the order that Cheryl read them out in the original one.
Right.
Because that was the first indication that she was possessed, was that she was facing the other way and able to like tell them which cards they were drawing. It was, as we mentioned, shot in New Zealand over the period of a month. Apparently there was some extra days filmed in the States afterwards, but what's it called? I was going to say primal shooting. That's not what it's called.
No.
Whatever it's called. The beginnings, the original camera work was done in New Zealand. Why can't I think there is like an actual phrase and it's just like
we're both
gone out of
one of those days.
It's gone out of my brain.
I have that day every day.
Apparently, there was a remake of the original in development 10 years before that in 2003. And they were, at that point, going to just recast the original characters. So there was going to be a new Ash. And the people who were being considered for the role were Ashton Kutcher and Marlon Wayans.
So, Scary Movie.
Can you imagine either of them being Ash in a remake? And then the other thing I had on here was that every girl in the leading cast of the remake is a scream queen. Obviously, we mentioned already that Jane Levy, the main character who plays Mia, was then in Don't Breathe, which is by the same director.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Blackmore is best known for The Vampire Diaries, and then Jessica Lucas had before this appeared in The Covenant, Cloverfield, and Amusement. So they're all multiple horror movie actresses.
Lucy Lawless was in Ash vs. Evil Dead. I
said that already.
Yeah.
When I was talking about it.
Sorry, I just remembered it.
Yeah, she was also in one of the Spider-Man movies. The first ones, first Raimi Spider-Man movie. She was a background character. She's in it for like a second. I think she might have one line. She's very briefly in the movie.
Was it her war cry from Xena?
No, it's not that.
Okay.
You'd barely recognize her.
Yeah.
In the Spider-Man movie.
Because she's naturally doesn't have dark hair.
Because
they dyed it for Xena, so.
I think she does have dark hair in Spider-Man.
Yeah. No, I like this whole genre. Like, it's a very, very fun. Like, I'm looking forward to making you watch 2 and Army of Darkness.
Oh, she's got red hair, and she's like a punk.
That's cool.
So she's got short red hair, and she's like goth, I guess. She's wearing like fishnets and stuff, and yeah. But she very briefly appears in Spider-Man.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's funny because like I feel like you never want to watch horror movies with me. I feel like if I want to watch horror movies, I watch them by myself. Or more recently, I've watched them with my friend Paul.
Yeah, who's the host of Hear Us Out.
Hear Us Out, yeah, which I mentioned earlier in the podcast. Go watch and listen to Hear Us Out on YouTube if you want to.
They make shorter content than we do.
They often do make shorter content than we do. And they've been going a lot longer than us, so they've got a lot more of a backlog.
Yeah.
Alright, is there anything else you want to
Stay, when your friend goes, hey, I've rented a cabin I borrowed a cabin from my uncle.
Yeah, just don't do it. Don't go to any cabins.
Question everything.
Don't go to any cabins in any woods. And if you go to a cabin in the woods, don't wander out into the forest alone.
Yeah, because then you'll get eaten by a giant bird.
Or you get
attacked by a tree.
You could get eaten by a giant bird, especially if it is in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Be very careful of those giant birds out there.
If you want a fantastic movie
that Nick has just spoiled.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything anymore then. Damn it. Shouldn't have said that.
You shouldn't.
Yeah.
You just gave the twist to the movie away. Well, now no one will know what it is.
Yeah.
We'll have to recommend it. We'll have to, like, on another episode, just be like, oh, by the way, we saw this movie. That's really good. You go into it knowing nothing about it. Good New Zealand horror.
Yeah.
Classic.
Like all horrors made in New Zealand, they're always good.
And they're always horror comedies, even if they don't intend to be horror comedies. Black Sheep.
Frighteners. Also, your boys.
Housebound.
Yeah, Housebound.
Yeah. There's a lot of just look up the catalogue of New Zealand made horror movies. Yeah. Including recent ones.
Yeah, they're usually black comedies because New Zealanders can't play anything straight.
Well, it's the same in Ireland.
Yeah. I
feel like most kind of Irish horrors are dark comedies.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us on this spooky episode. We'll be with you again with another spooky episode.
Yeah, we've got another spooky episode with some very classic spooky films coming up.
Spooktacular Spooktober.
You can find all our details on our website, ittakes2.co.nz, or like we said before, join our Discord. The link will be in the show notes or description of this, and also on our website.
Thank you for joining us. Stay out of the woods.
Goodbye.